a federation of 8 territories: Mauritania, Senegal, Mali, Guinea, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, Benin and Niger. The capital was Dakar. This whole region was called French West Africa. Fun fact, it was 8 times bigger than European France. So how did they control it? The same way they captured it, using brute force. France did face rebellions in the first decades after the conquest, like the Tuareg rebellion of 1916. The Tuaregs are an ethnic group living in the Saharas. In Niger, they live in the country's north. When the Tuaregs rebelled, France crushed them. Summary executions were the norm. It was through these crackdowns that Paris held on to its colonies. Many of them fought wars for France. Around 2.5 million Africans were part of the First World War, another 1 million in the Second World War. These people were not French citizens, they were French subjects. And that equation changed only after the Second World War. In 1946, Niger, along with other colonies, became overseas territories. They got seats in parliament, and with elections came political parties. The most important one was the PPN, the Progressive Party of Niger. 2 men came to dominate this party, the radical Djibo Bakari and the moderate Hamani Diori. They were cousins, also rivals. An important moment came in 1958. France had adopted a new constitution. Its colonies now had to vote on it, sort of like a referendum. If Niger passed it, the country would remain in the French community. The cousin politicians chose different sides. The radical Bakari called for a boycott. But Diori said, let's vote yes. He did not want independence yet. He wanted more autonomy within France, and he prevailed in 1958. Around 72% of Niger's citizens voted to approve the constitution. He also became the new president. But the tide was slowly shifting. Dissent was growing in parts of Niger, especially the northern deserts. So in 1960, France had to give in. They agreed to grant independence to Niger. Diori was elected president again. He banned all other parties, cracked down on rivals, and ruled like an autocrat. Now, normally the story would end here. But in West Africa, it does not. France began acting like a toxic ex, hanging around too much or meddling for no reason. This policy has a name too, France-Afrique, a sphere of French influence in West Africa. It was the brainchild of this man, former French President Charles de Gaulle. He asked his advisors to build up France-Afrique in 1962. And how did they do that? By building personal networks. France propped up leaders, often dictators in West Africa. They gave them military support, a little aid, and a whole lot of French glamour. What did they get in return? Resources and influence. More than 1,000 French companies operate in West Africa. They have the 3rd biggest investments. First is America, second is Britain. They also have soldiers there. France has deployed 3,000 troops in Africa. Around half of them are in Niger. Their job is to fight terror groups, but you can see why this is problematic. Imagine Britain stationing soldiers in India. Terrorism or not, it's an affront. From the 1980s, French presidents have promised to dilute France-Afrique. Macron has done so too, but their actions suggest the opposite. I have some trivia for you. 14 countries in Africa use the same currency. It's called the CFA franc. It was created back in 1945, before African independence. But even today, 14 countries use it. And I'll tell you how it works. West African countries deposit 50% of their reserves at the French treasury. In return, they can use the CFA franc. Its value is pegged to the euro. France says the currency brings stability to West Africa, but it also brings trauma, the trauma of a colonial past. The CFA franc is often called monetary servitude. It is one of the many reminders of French colonialism. Now you know why people in Niger dislike France. They plundered and razed entire villages, raped and mutilated women and children, imposed a colonial currency on them, and most importantly, refused to leave. France is a strange case. Most countries are blamed for their colonial policies, but France is also blamed for its post-colonial policies. Of course, that does not justify the coup, but it does explain why a lot of people support it. President Macron has always had a taste for foreign policy. He wants to leave a mark on the world. Maybe this is it. He could be the president who destroyed France-Afrique. Mali has moved away from French influence, so has Burkina Faso and now Niger. He may not have intended it, but that could be his legacy.